Welcome to the Pillar Podcast, where we put racial equity front and center. Join us as we explore equity. We'll take a look at overcoming opportunity gaps and strategies that ensure equitable learning experiences for all students in JCPS.
Welcome, everyone, to Season 2 of the Pillar Podcast. I am John Marshall, the Chief Equity Officer of Jefferson County Public Schools here in Louisville, Kentucky, home of the Louisville Lip, the greatest athlete of all times, Muhammad Ali. As we get into this, we have another outstanding season of the Pillar with you, and we thought it would be best to start off with an equity officer that is truly unapologetically doing the work, new to the work, but truly unapologetically doing the work, believes in equity, believes in racial equity, believes in inclusion, believes in public education, and is a dear friend of mine. I met him and we hit it off. He met my team, Diversity, Equity, and Poverty, and we hit it off. So he is now a cousin of Jefferson County Public Schools and a cousin of Diversity, Equity, and Poverty, Mr. Clifton Thompson. And we were going to give him some time to introduce himself before we get into a little discussion around all things public education and equity. Mr. Thompson, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I'm Clifton Thompson. I am the father of Najee P. Thompson and Clifton Thompson, who I call Little Cliff. I say that because wanting schools to be what they had and what they should have is a drive. When you're a father, you want the best for your children. But then as an educator, all those children are yours. And so the work is about making sure that I can help provide an education for children that I think would befit my own. And so that's why the work is, they say, it's business, not personal. This work often blurs that line and becomes very personal because it's about helping our babies and making sure that they can be successful and happy in life. I am the director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in Lawrence Township Public Schools, a really diverse community, wonderful place to work, wonderful place to live. They are about the work. They are doing the work in a meaningful way, and that's from the top down, whether it be the school board members, the superintendent, the teachers, our equity champions. We are navigating this pathway that isn't linear. It's curves and ups and downs and hills and valleys, and we're working to get it right.
So thank you for that. And I'm going to play on the last couple of sentences you said with the curves and ups and downs of that, Mr. Thompson, as an equity officer yourself. And how long have you been now in this role officially?
I am the first in the role of Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion for Lawrence Township Public Schools. So I'm starting my second year. The position opened, and I started July 1st of 2021, and a department of one with some people that have some equity, extra duty positions. They're teachers, and they were called Equity Warriors, and now we changed that to Equity Champions because we really felt that warriors connotated this battle, which it is, but we're going to champion equity. We're going to bring you to our side. We're not going to just kill you and leave you in the field. We're going to educate you and help you to understand why all children should be educated at a level that's high and be able to achieve and see themselves in the learning.
So with that being said, let's jump into my first question. And I would love to hear me, who have been doing this for a while now. I might be one of the longest standing, if not the longest standing equity officer. You've been in this 2 years. And as someone that is teaching and also learning as you go, what is something you will tell the chief equity officer that just started this August or this September that you've learned in your 2 years? What is something you want to share with the other equity officers that are going to watch this, but particularly the neophyte new equity officer that may have just started 2-3 months ago? What does Thompson say about that, or have to say to this person?
Immediately find someone in the work that you trust, that you can call, that you can model what you do after, that you can bounce ideas off of, that you can find a safe space when you think you may have messed up, when you think you may not have it right, that you can call and say, hey, this is what happened. As we say, what had happened was And that'll tell you straight, you messed that up. Or look, I had that situation also, and it's not coming from a place of judgment, but a place of getting you better. Immediately, look for that person. Find out that from that person, because then it'll help streamline some of the work that you do. Because if you're new to it in a new place, you think that having that open field is wonderful. Oh, I get to create. And then you realize, wait, there's no foundation for me to walk on. How am I creating? What should I do? What's the first thing? What should my focus be? And so reaching out to you, it helped this second year with the focus being equity is in those classrooms. It's about instruction and how children learn. And so every decision we make has to go back to that, whether it's hiring, whether it's choosing a program for math or reading, whether it's looking at after school, looking at busing, looking at our rules and regulations. How does it impact that classroom? And what can we do from this office to impact teachers, even the ones that haven't bought into this idea of diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Right.
To find that person.
That's powerful. And finding that person, as you and I know, sometimes in the district with this department being brand new, that person for educators will probably be you. So let me ask you this. As we kind of talk about finding that person and you being that person for equity, and now it's everybody's responsibility, but you are the one that's kind of trying to drive this into the schools or into the district. What is your statement, or what is your stance on the politicizing of public education, but even more so the politicizing of this work around culturally responsive teaching, equitable education? What are some things that your district is doing, and what are some things that you stand steadfast on in spite of the attempted political capturing that happens to public education and the work that clearly your board and superintendent believe in? What is Thompson up there doing to not let it get too politicized and keep teachers engaged, informed, and protected to do the work?
Tell the truth. Be transparent. When I started, the big thing was CRT, but it wasn't culturally responsive teaching. It was critical race theory. Right. And looking at it, I realized, regardless of the side you were on, most people that were on social media talking about it didn't know what critical race theory was. They didn't know why they wanted it, but they didn't know why they didn't want it either.
Right.
And so I think it was up to us to tell the truth about it and talk about it in some real ways. Meaning, in most districts that I've worked in order to get something done in the classroom, we have to provide a lot of professional development for our teachers. And we have to make sure they have the tools to implement that program for things they've been trained on in college. So to implement a reading program, you got to do hours of PD, math, hours of PD. And these educators have been trained in reading and math, right? They were not trained in critical race theory. So it would be almost impossible for us to provide the PD for them to be teaching critical race theory in our schools. Right. When you say that in that way, then it kind of gets those people that want to attack what we do with inequity. It gets them to have pause, because we're not politicizing it. We're saying, well, I might want it taught, but I can't get it done because it would take too much. It would take too many resources. But we are talking about culturally responsive teaching, meaning our teaching has always been culturally responsive. Mm-hmm. It's just been responsive to one group of students, and the other groups had to learn in that way. Now we're saying, no, we're going to make it responsive to all students. We're going to situate them in the learning. We're going to create problems that have their names, but also have, and I got this again from JCPS, we're teaching racial and proportion through reparations. We're going to make the topic engaging to a segment of our class, but then everybody gets to learn about it. But we're learning about racial and proportion. We don't have to discuss really what we feel about reparations. We want to discuss racial and proportion. And this is how we're going to engage in that learning. And so that's culturally responsive to our populations of students. And then what it does to everyone it makes you feel whole. Because if you center whiteness, then whiteness has no chance, no choice but to feel at the center. And if you
Right.
always feel at the center, you have no choice but to feel superior.
Right. Say it.
So we have to help all of our children be better adults by centering them all or decentering them all, engaging them all in a way that helps. My thing is, let's be honest. Let's not shy away from it. Let's talk about what's best for students. Let's talk about the fallacies on either side. Let's talk about what we have to do. When I got here, there was a group that really thought I would be against our SROs, our student school resource officers. And I've had some really good experiences in places with SROs
Mm-hmm.
and how it can work. I've had some experiences where it wasn't so good. And so I talked about what happens when it works well. Who's in charge of it? Those officers have to come into school as educators, not officers. So that means they have to report to the superintendent. If you
Bingo.
leave them reporting to the chief of police, they stay police officers. We don't want that. We want educators in our buildings. You just happen to be an educator that wears a uniform, has a gun and a badge, and upholds the law. But you're an educator first. And so I make sure I speak about that. And when I talked about it, we had better conversation about it. And so that group that was totally and adamantly against it said, you know what? Okay, we'll watch and see. And then they thought about some of their relationships with SROs when they were in school and said, you know what? It wasn't bad. That person was good to me. And so we were able to come to an understanding, but that's being transparent, or as you would say, forward facing. That's putting it out there without any political agenda. Because I don't think educating all children is a political agenda.
Right.
It's a moral imperative.
Yeah. So, man, it's funny you say, it's not funny you say that. It's interesting you say that. And you and I talk offline and on the record all the time. And I just appreciate your work. As you are doing this is time for you to say, what is something that you're working on right now that you think everybody needs to come to you to check it out because you really, but you getting some things done. What is the thing you have that you're working on in your district that A, you're proud of, and B, you are certain if/when this becomes fibrous in your community and in your district, it is the lighthouse of equity work. What's going on up there in Lawrence Township that you're ushering in that's going to show that it can be done?
I'm not ushering it in. I am continuing it. So when I got here, there was a group, like I said, called Equity Warriors, and they were classroom teachers that took on the challenge to help other classroom teachers be proficient in culturally responsive teaching, in social justice education, and helping to make sure that all of our students received an education that was befitting their humanity. And so taking that group and progressing and moving it towards equity champions and helping to find a balance between activism and educators. So we can be activists and then sometimes the education part falls because we serve our community and everyone in our community. And so if we're an activist, we can sometimes push people away. As an educator, we have to bring all in. So helping to find that balance, but when it works, and it's going to work, and getting those equity champions to be involved in more things. So we have them with public relations. They're going to be going to community meetings. We have them, we're going to start a podcast because I'm a copycat, they're going to work on that. We're going to talk about putting our best practices on our website so that teachers can see, oh, this is what a good lesson looks like. Oh, this is how you engage students. So getting them involved in all things equity so that that group is expanded, and then maybe we can pull some out of the classroom and make them full-time equity champions doing the work like, Rachel, Avon, Lamanda, they came here. When they came to visit, when I say they wowed everybody,
Mm-hmm.
they wowed everybody. And you know, it was at a time of the year where you guys were winding down,
Mm-hmm.
and they have some serious work they have to do. And so I pulled back and was like, listen, don't y'all listen. They said email them and reach out, and they mean it. But
Mm-hmm.
give them a break. They about to go hard and heavy. So will we open those lines of communications back up? But to really wrap up, the answer is making sure that that group is visible in everything we do in the district, from finance to curriculum and instruction to climate and culture to programming to
Mm-hmm.
rules and regulations, and then taking what we do here and spreading it throughout Mercer County. So we are a small district compared to JCPS, but our county is large, and and our county is the state capital, Trenton, and so Trenton, is large. But we can take what we've learned and what we're doing here and help other school districts. Because I firmly believe that if we get it right here and no one else is getting it right, then we're not getting it right. Because there's children that need to be educated other places.
I appreciate that, and I totally agree. The anti-racist specialists that you speak of really enjoyed the welcome that you gave them and the tour of the district and the city and those that they met. The other educational execs that were up there that they met, they spoke very highly of them. Let me ask you this: as we talk about the teacher shortage and we talk about the need to sustain teachers, recruit teachers, do all of those things, I want to get a little bit more granular and talk about Black male educators. And Black male educators in JCPS is something we are unapologetically trying to have more of, under the leadership of Dr. Amy Green Webb, our chief of HR. Last year, we had the highest recruiting class of Black males, although we still have an enormous amount of things we have to work on. We had the highest recruiting class of Black males. We know what the research says about having such. I would just like for you to kind of talk about your understanding or your belief about having Black male educators in all areas and ranks of the district. What is your stance? And are y'all doing anything around that? And if not, okay, but what is your stance on just having Black males in classrooms and schoolhouses?
If you don't see yourself in education, one, you can't believe you're going to be an educator, and two, you're not going to fully be engaged in the learning in a way that is meaningful to your life, because it's always going to be about someone else. And so having Black male educators is really impactful on our youth. I know Mr. Jones was probably my first Black male educator. He was a phys ed teacher, but he made sure we knew that he was not about throwing out balls and jump ropes and letting us just run around. He was about
Right.
the business of physical education and being an educator. But I was lucky because the principal was a Black male. And so I grew up seeing, oh, okay, we're in the classroom and we're in the administrative office. We're the person you want to be around and the person you don't want to see, right? And we encompass all of those
Right.
things. And I can't say that I'm here without that. And so that means I have to provide that for our students. Lawrence Township Public Schools, our human resource director, Sean Fry, is about that work. And he's looking, and he signed me up for a committee with the state on how we can get educators of color. And one of the things is, one, we have to remove barriers. Two, we have to make sure, we have to stop dogging ourselves in education. We have to make sure that people know you can earn a living, take care of your family, raise children, have fun, go on a vacation as an educator. We might not
Absolutely.
be on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but we're doing well. We can go watch the people on the cover of Sports Illustrated. So we have to get some black males into that pipeline. And so we're going to be working about how to do that. What do we need to do? Some of that is grow your own. JCPS is doing that. That was already starting before we got here. And I tell you what, we talk about COVID. Places that had things established were hurt by COVID, but places that were just starting things, when things were in their infancy, COVID has really hurt. So it was started before I got here, but we're getting it moving again because we have to grow our own. And that means we have to make sure we're doing things in HR when we're hiring that speaks to an understanding of what answers mean, what resumes look like, that could be culturally different, and why things happen, and phrasing. You know, understanding that sometimes when I got into the work, education even, I did things I didn't know how to name to it. And others, when they talk about it, they would say, oh, I'm a servant leader. And I'm like, okay, I think I understand that.
Right.
But what I did was servant leadership. I want to make things better. So if in an interview, I say I love making people better. That is my joy, is to make someone else better, make someone else shine. Well, in order to do that, I have to serve them. I'm a servant leader, but I don't know that buzzword. I don't know that phrase. Sometimes in an interview, we select the person that knows that buzzword, that phrase, but doesn't embody it. And so we have to look for those things because many times...
I'll say that again. Say that again for everybody's going to listen, because that is critical as we talk about equity in education and hiring.
Many people know the buzzwords and the phrases. They, you know, if someone says intersectionality 12 times, they probably don't understand what it means. we have to embody what those words and phrases mean and listen for those words and phrases in the answer that was given without the words and phrases. If someone is making you better, they are serving you.
Right.
If they're investing in you, they are serving you. That is the epitome of servant leadership. But many of us, people of color, we live it, we believe it. We've heard about it in our churches, in our mosques, in our temples, and we just don't really always know the academic word for it. And even when we do learn the academic word for it, we don't make it a part of what we say because it's really us.
It's what we do.
It's what we do. And so we have to be able to now, one of the things I want to do is talk about PD for when you're on an interview team so that you understand what you're hearing. And understand also that certain things we have to forget about, like fit. You know, there's an idea about fit. Does this person fit? Does this person fit? There's a lot of places that you and I could make better that we won't fit in.
Correct.
But when we get there, if given the opportunity, when they get better, they'll love us. But at the beginning, we won't fit.
Right.
That's
powerful that you say that. And I've never heard it that way, but you're right. There's certain places, although could get better from this kind of work and other equity officers and equity leaders, equity champions doing it. Out the gate, it's not a fit. We're going to have to go in there and make sure that there are some things that it's form-fitting for everyone. We talk about inclusion and all, but there's some things that aren't fitting for our kids right now. That's very, very powerful that you said that. Let me ask you two more questions because I know we don't have a lot of time, and I always enjoy talking to you, my brother. You're doing phenomenal work. I'm big on the sustainability of self in this work. And I always talk to people about the hard part about doing equity work. For a lot of us is there is no off switch. As you're addressing racism in education, sexism in education, classism in education, a lot of times after you walk out of the office, you are now on alert for being exposed to racism or having a racist act upon you. So there is no off switch. As you're raising children, daughters, you're worried about all those things. So for equity officers, you and I have talked about this. I am very big on sustaining your health, and understanding that since there's no off switch permanent, there has to be a time where you, I won't say detach, where you can at least go somewhere and breathe. What are some things that you are doing to breathe away from the constant onslaught of all isms education, all isms America, all isms that befall upon a chief equity officer, particularly an equity officer of color? What are some things that you do to sustain self? Or you're not doing a good job at it?
Well, so you do these things to sustain self, and even within those things, you run into your equity work.
Absolutely.
Right? So I love being a part of my children's lives in a meaningful way and watching them be successful. So whether that means giving advice or being there, well, there's times when they run into these barriers that have to do with equity and someone seeing something. So then that, you're still back into the equity work. Playing golf, love playing golf. But you run into issues and real love playing golf to the point that I will set a tee time for 6:30 in the morning. I'm not a morning person, right? But to go do that activity, I'm going to get up and I might drive an hour to do it. And a buddy of mine, we played at a golf course that we liked. We've been there several times. And in front of us in line to pay our green fees, there was a group of 4 white gentlemen, and their conversation alluded to the fact that they had not played there before. We had on T-shirts, they had on T-shirts. Our collared shirts, our polo shirts were in the car. They pay their money. Guy taking their money doesn't say a word. We go up to pay our money, and he says, you have to wear collared shirts to play.
Say I'm talking about?
And it was like, man, it's 7 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And I got to go through this. Right. But I had to learn what's my focus. My focus is to change the world one student at a time. And the guy behind that counter wasn't my student.
Bingo.
He wasn't my student. So it wasn't my job that day to change his mind about anything.
And you wanted to get on the course. You wanted to play golf to relax.
I wanted to play golf. That was it. And so that's how you have to separate. Same in the gym. I'm in the gym and the guy has on a T-shirt and I'm all about law enforcement. You know, if someone knocks my godmother in the head, I want the police to be there, help, and find him, right? But I want someone that has a law enforcement officer that has humanity. When my cousin, who's a police officer, goes on the scene of somewhere, I want him to be safe and come home to his children. So people don't understand when we talk about law enforcement, we're talking about police brutality and cover-up. We're not in corruption. We're not talking about those good folks that we love and care about who are police, or those good folks that we love and care about who the police protect. We're talking about brutality and corruption. But he has on a shirt that speaks about cover-up, brutality, and corruption in a positive light. And I'm like, man, just do these exercises. You know, get yourself in shape for your children. And I noticed the same happens with those equity champions. And they weren't able to separate sometimes because when they got pushed back on the work they did from their colleagues, they had to go back in those buildings and work with those people the next day. And so we found, through the work, I met Dr. Nancy Doan, who wrote a great book, Let's Talk About Race and Other Hard Things. And really it's about compassionate dialogue. But compassionate dialogue for self. It helps you deal with I'm not going to change that person's mind. So don't get mad when I don't. Don't get mad at myself. Don't hold on to it. Because when you hold on to it, 2 of the smartest objects on equity is the shower head and the steering wheel. Because we're in the shower or in our car letting them have it.
Absolutely.
So, but the book teaches don't even carry it that far. It's not your job to educate everyone. It's not your job to change minds on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
Plant that seed, cover it up, and when you plant something, the best way for it to grow is to cover it up with what? Fertilizer.
Fertilizer.
So that stuff that's coming out their mouth is the fertilizer that's covering up the seed you planted, and let it grow. And so that helps. Continue to do those things that you're passionate about, that you enjoy away from the work. And when you're doing those things, your work is going to come into it, but you're not the chief equity officer or the director at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
You, John and Cliff.
Thank you for that. And I hope some other equity officers have heard that and will do what they need to do to take care of themselves, because it is it's relentless. The work is relentless. 2 things left, and then we will get off of here.
All right.
And this is also pivots, but it's also still something we do. There's a closing activity that I do with my team sometimes, and it's accepting the award on behalf of. So real quickly, this is how this works. I want you to accept the reward of Equity Champion on behalf of someone other than yourself. And when you receive the award, you say, I'm accepting this award on whoever it is you believe deserves the Equity Champion Award. And you're going to give him or her a shout out for receiving the award. So that everybody that listens to this is going to know who this person is and maybe read his or her book, or maybe it's a teacher, or maybe it's a custodian, or maybe it's a bus driver. But you're going to shout out the person you're going to receive an award for an Equity Champion in Lawrence Township right now. So let's start. I want to give this award to Clifton Thompson, who is accepting it on behalf of someone else in Lawrence Township. Clifton Thompson, please come accept the award, and you have about 30 seconds of a speech.
Oh, that's great. I can take off the glasses because I'll be honest, and you'll probably edit this out because not answering the question, but just so you know, my grandfather, who I call Boo Boo, was a fighter and a crier. So I learned at an early age.
You can accept the award on his behalf.
No. I'm not going to accept on his behalf, but I learned at an early age, men can cry. So when you first said it, I knew who I was going to accept it on behalf of, and I was covering my eyes so you wouldn't see them water and tear up right away. But being that we're in Lawrence Township, I'm going to accept this award on behalf of Fred Vereen. And Fred Vereen is a man who's from Lawrence, who is a graduate of Lawrence High School, who is from the Eggerts Crossing area of Lawrence, as most black folks during his time were from. And he has unselfishly committed his life to making life better for black folks in Lawrence and the surrounding area. In the early 1970s, during the development of project housing, he was instrumental and spearheaded the bringing of Eggerts Crossing Village to Lawrence and the Eggerts Crossing area for low-income housing.
It's love, man.
And let me tell you something. There's grass. He made sure there was grass. It's not concrete all around. The parking lot is concrete. Everywhere else is grass. The apartments are really garden apartments, upstairs, downstairs, 2 to 4 bedrooms, multiple bathrooms.
Did you take my specialist to see it?
Yes.
Yes, they were talking about it.
We went to see it. I said, this is the low-income housing. And they were like, can we, no, this is not. And what he did was he then also they built a community center in the village. And they were instrumental in connecting with the school system and finding out what kids in the village needed. And when they did that, they found out there was a high rate of referral to special education. there was a low rate of attendance at report card night, and they devised a plan to educate parents to let them know what you mean in your child's education, regardless of your level of learning, regardless of your level of understanding. If you do these things, it will help your child immensely. And over the course of several years, they went from having a high rate of students being referred to special education to no new referrals. And that is because the work of Fred Vereen was selfless. He's still with us, in shape, on the ball. I'm accepting this award on his behalf as an icon of Lawrence Township.
So shout out to Fred Vereen and the work that he has done, and being recognized in season 2 of Pillar 1 from another titan in the work of equity, Clifton Thompson. I hope all those that have listened have gotten something from this magnificent leader who is doing great work in a great district. Thank you to the board of Lawrence Township and the leadership of Lawrence Township, the educators of Lawrence Township, but more importantly, the students of Lawrence Township for continuing to hopefully make something better. My last question, and then we will close out. If we were to make a playlist that really fortified equity, that we could send out to all, you have one song, Mr. Thompson. What song do you want to be on the Pillar Season 2 playlist that we will have, and we will make a culminating, and we're going to send them to everybody we interview at the end of the year? What is your song that you want on that playlist?
I'm horrible with titles, but it was a song that was sung by George Benson and Whitney Houston. And it's about children being our future. Gosh. I don't want to pick up the phone because, we can Google everything. But they both sang it. Oh, my goodness. I am drawing such a blank.
I believe the children are the future, that one?
Yes.
Okay. We will add that to it. I appreciate you, Mr. Thompson, and for your time. This is season 2 of the Pillar Podcast, episode 1. We have had the opportunity and the
greatest love of all. Ian Brandon, I'm sorry. Being that they can edit stuff, Greatest love of all.
Greatest love of all.
Yes.
Season 2, episode 1, Pillar Podcast. We have the mountainous man of equity, Clifton Thompson, doing some magnificent work. Thank you so much, my brother. We will be talking soon, and we will send this to you. I hope all listen, enjoy, and remember, equity has to be unapologetic. It is a contact sport. Let's get it. Thank you, Mr. Thompson.